For more than half a century, Luxembourg has been a centre of excellence for international and cross-border financial services. Having flourished alongside European integration and the common European market, Luxembourg today acts as an EU hub and competence centre to the world's leading financial institutions. Catering to the needs of global investors, the financial centre provides a unique combination of international expertise, a complete toolbox of investment products, and highly specialised financial institutions and service providers. From wealth management, treasury and corporate banking to fund services, banks in Luxembourg have specialised in serving clients across borders. In Europe's leading fund centre, asset managers find the perfect ecosystem to launch and distribute funds to investors across the world. Luxembourg's insurance industry has decades of experience in developing solutions to meet the needs of highly mobile citizens and multinational companies. A leading centre for international debt listings, securitization and post-trade services, Luxembourg is the right place for companies to finance their global activities. English-speaking regulators and administrations, access to a multilingual and highly skilled workforce, a AAA-rated stable economy, an innovation-friendly digital nation, an international business environment right in the heart of the European continent. Luxembourg provides the ideal environment for international banks, asset managers and insurance companies to thrive within the European Union and beyond. Grow beyond borders. Luxembourg.
Welcome to Focus On, bringing together financial industry experts of different horizons, sharing and discussing their insights.
Bon dia, buenos dias, good morning. Thank you very much for being here with us today. I'm very pleased to welcome you to our live stream, directly brought to you from Luxembourg. To those of you joining for the first time, Luxembourg for Finance has been organizing these events on a wide range of topics over the last 9 months, digitally crossing borders to investors and financial institutions inside and outside the European Union. It has been almost 2 years since our last physical event in Madrid, and we hope to return as soon as business travel will normalize. In the meantime, we reach out digitally, and today we focus on Iberia. As Europe slowly recovers from the pandemic, the financial services industry is going through a remarkable period of change. One that will leave its mark for a very long time and that will push all of us to look at things differently. The speakers of today's program work with Luxembourg and Iberia on a daily basis. They are uniquely placed to discuss these changes and to highlight the key trends and solutions in international wealth management, asset management and fund servicing, as well as fintech. Now, without taking any more of your time, it's my great pleasure to welcome Luxembourg's Finance Minister, Pierre Gramegna, to share his views on how we can all build a more resilient and sustainable European economy. Minister, it's an honor for us to have you here. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to be opening the digital event organized by Luxembourg for Finance for Spain and Portugal. I would have preferred to be there myself in presence, but we are not still at the very end of the pandemic, but getting there slowly but surely. There's a silver lining at the horizon with the vaccines. We will be back to normality in a couple of weeks or months. This being said, I had the privilege and pleasure to visit Lisbon in May with very high security measures, I must say, on the occasion of the Eurogroup and the ECOFIN in Lisbon, as Portugal has the presidency of the European Union. And it was the first time since nearly a year that finance ministers got together for real. And I could appreciate what difference it makes. So this is nevertheless an important event that Luxembourg for Finance is organizing. I'm glad to be addressing you. I will focus on two topics here. First, how is the recovery in Europe after the pandemic and the economic crisis that it has triggered, in part number one, and in part number two, I will focus on the triple transition. More about that in a couple of minutes. Stay with me. I'm going to tell you why I speak about three transitions. So first, the recovery in Europe. Many had said that the economic crisis that was triggered by the pandemic last year was the worst, the deepest ever since a century. I was always a little bit more cautious, and in hindsight, I think it was good to be cautious because it was a very specific economic crisis that was due to an external event, exogenous, as is said in economics. And there were quite a few who were hoping for a V-shaped recovery, and that's what we really had. So last year we really had a very deep recession, but it was very limited in time. Now we know it, so we see the light at the end of the tunnel. Basically, last year the European Union had a downturn of GDP of minus 6%. In Luxembourg, only minus 1.3%. And now the recovery in 2021 will be around 4 to 6% for most countries. For a few countries, including mine, we have already, as we speak, reached a pre-crisis GDP level, which shows that this crisis was very compact and short, although deep, and very costly for public finances, but that we're getting out of it. And one of the main reasons why we're getting out of it fast is that there was a lot of European solidarity. Who would have guessed or even envisaged prior to the pandemic that we would have such a display of European solidarity? Back on April 9th of 2020, during the night, the Eurogroup decided three emergency measures, three safety nets worth 540 billion euro, a very, very important package which encompassed an intervention of the European Stability Mechanism that made hundreds of billions available to the markets. Second, the European Investment Bank, which guaranteed loans for small and medium-sized companies, and then the SURE program, which was very much used in Spain and in Portugal, worth 100 billion euro to finance short labor mechanisms. By the way, this measure was financed through social bonds that the Commission issued, social bonds which, by the way, were launched and listed in Luxembourg under Luxembourg legislation. So this very quick answer paved also the way for Next Generation EU budget, which was another act of solidarity between all the European countries. As a result, the recovery is faster, and we have saved many livelihoods, many jobs, and many companies. Talking about solidarity, and before talking about which type of recovery we want. Let me also say that solidarity has been a key factor over the last couple of years inside the European Union, also in tax matters. Europe has been spearheading the implementation of the OECD BEPS regulations, and Luxembourg, as all the other EU countries, has implemented all of that. And as we all know, one part was unfinished business, and that was digital taxation. And as we know, the G7 a couple of weeks ago, which met in London, had an agreement in principle to introduce a minimum effective taxation of around 15%, and also indicated that in the so-called Pillar 1, there would be a part of the tax paid by the most profitable multinational enterprises would be paid in the country of consumption. So these two measures are quite a litmus test of the new landscape that we want to have worldwide, and I'm very confident that at European level, but also at OECD level, we're going to be able to implement these new measures quite quickly. There will be an OECD ministerial meeting in October where Luxembourg has the vice chair, and by then we should be able to redesign taxation in a more fair and appropriate manner for the 21st century. This being said, what does the recovery look like? The European Union has insisted a lot on the dual transition, and this is the part 2 of my presentation, on the dual transition, the environmental and climate-related one, and the digital transition. And I would like to add a third one, which I would call the sustainable finance transition. A couple of words on climate change and environment. If the pandemic has shown many things, that we need a more resilient health system in many countries, we need to be more conscious of the interconnection of all the countries and globalization. It has, on top of it, shown that during the lockdowns, the planet was in much better health, because the activities of human beings is a key factor in CO2 emissions. So it is urgent to act, and that's what lots of countries are doing, including mine. We introduced a CO2 tax in the first days of January of this year, because climate change is a must. It is not a nice to have. So that's why the Commission has insisted that nearly a third of the package of the Resilience and Recovery Fund need to be invested in climate change related projects. And that's what you have done in Spain and in Portugal. That's what we have done in Luxembourg too. We have even nearly 60% of our program in the Resilience and Recovery Fund that is dedicated to climate change. In Luxembourg, this package is of a very limited amount. The whole plan for Luxembourg will be 93 million euro. You know better than I do that the package, the plan for Portugal and Spain is in the billions, and in the case of Spain, in the hundreds of billions. So it is an enormous opportunity to build back better. That's the formula that's being used. I even like another formula better, which is build forward better, because we're not really going to copy what we've done in the past. We want to do it with more quality, with more respect of climate change and biodiversity. This being said, what is key on top of climate change is digitalization. In fact, digitalization, artificial intelligence, and lots of other things are going to help us achieve these very ambitious goals. And let's face it, digitalization is an area where Europe is a little bit behind, lagging behind compared to other areas of the world. But in climate change, we're really leading the pack, the euro being the most used currency in sustainable finance. And that brings me to say a few words on the third pillar that I would like to conclude on, which is sustainable finance. if we want to achieve the ambitious goals of the Paris Accord on the one hand and foster more investments in digitalization, we need sustainable finance. What does it mean? It means we need finance to be able to trigger and finance more green projects on the one hand, but we need to make sure that finance itself is becoming more green. So it's the two sides of one coin that go together here. And sustainable finance is a topic, in my opinion, that has not received the necessary attention by all of us in the past. Now, Luxembourg has been spearheading this quite a lot, maybe due to the fact that the European Investment Bank back in 2007 has issued the very first green bond. But still today, 14 years later, the amount of green bonds being issued is still less than 5% of all the bonds being issued. And so we in Luxembourg has focused on that, and the Luxembourg Green Exchange today lists more than 50% of the worldwide listed green or sustainable bonds. So there's still a lot that can be done in this area. We have issued a sustainable bond ourselves as a government last year with a very new framework that takes into account the sustainable development goals of the European, not of the European Union, of the United Nations, which I'm wearing here, and I'm wearing this every day because I really believe in it. But this sustainability bond was extremely successful. It combined social aspects and green aspects, and we could see that the markets are looking for such products. We've also seen that companies and asset managers are trying to green and to make sustainable their portfolios. It's still not enough, far from it, but we have seen that in the beginning of 2021, we have passed an important milestone as more than 2 trillion assets now are considered to be sustainable worldwide. Europe being obviously number one here, and Luxembourg in that part playing an important role. So I think while you will have these discussions here after my introductory talk, you will be able to focus on these things and also focus on the fact that Europe is part of the solution, part of the answers. We need a capital markets union where sustainable finance taxonomy plays an important role. Europe hasn't been passive in this. I mean, we have now the Pan-European Pension Plan directive that has been agreed. We also have securitization that has received a new framework. So Europe is very active in this area and is combining a modern world of finance with the aspects of sustainability. So I believe that a lot can be done in this area, and I encourage you in your discussion to also have a focus on sustainable finance. Therefore, my a little bit strange title of the triple transition. I wish you a good conference.
Thank you very much, Minister Gramegna, for setting the scene. I'm sure that the triple transition and the build for better will come back in the next panel discussions. Now, COVID-19 has indeed introduced a new reality, and that's no different in wealth management, especially when we look at wealth management in a cross-border environment. There are many different factors that come into play. And that's why our next panel will take a multi-dimensional approach. And there is no one better than you, Yves, as CEO of the Luxembourg Bankers Association, to take us and your panel on a 360-degree tour. Yves, thank you very much for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lynn, for that very kind introduction. And I'm pretty sure we can cover some of the aspects which you mentioned and which our Minister of Finance has alluded to in his inaugural speech. So I'm waiting for my panelists to join for that discussion then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome everybody to our focus session on wealth management. I'm very pleased and honored to be surrounded by such a distinguished panel of speakers and experts today. And I have on the screen joining us via video Falk Fischer, who is the CEO of Bank Julius Baer here in Luxembourg, with more than 25 years of international exposure to wealth management and private banking. Welcome, Falk. Next to me, Héctor Esteban Moreno, who is the managing director at Bankinter here in Luxembourg, being at the board of Bankinter and being as well on the board of the bank's asset management company. Welcome, Héctor.
Thank you very much.
Next to that, Luis Munoz, partner at DLA Piper here in Luxembourg, covering primarily international and corporate tax law.
Thank you.
Then we have Juan José Rodriguez Garcia, International Markets Director of Cardiff Life in Luxembourg. Broad background and international exposure in the insurance field, especially on the life insurance side. Welcome all of you to our hopefully very interesting discussion. Before we start with the panel discussion, let me give you a broad perspective on wealth management in Luxembourg. This business has grown substantially over the last couple of years, with nearly doubling the size of the assets under management over the last 7 years. I mean, this is something which is tremendous from a results perspective. Looking at what the markets have done and how we've been able to achieve that growth over the last couple of years is phenomenal here in Luxembourg. We've seen shifts, however, in the way we've done business as well in the geographies that Luxembourg is targeting. Whereas a long time ago, the neighboring countries have been the ones which have covered more and most of the business, it has turned to become much more international. And we've seen, obviously, lots of other countries from an investor's point of view, nowadays having 20% of the assets under management being originating from outside Europe even. From a client perspective as well, we've seen a big shift from an affluent client base into a high net worth and ultra high net worth base here in Luxembourg. Like 77% of the assets today are from clients from the high net worth space, having more than 5 million. And 58% of the assets under management are held by clients having more than 20 million of assets under management in their bank account, basically. So we see a big shift from an affluent base into a higher net worth client population. Before I turn to my panelists, let me just pick up what our finance minister mentioned in his introductory speech to the conference, and what certainly is becoming more and more important from a wealth management perspective and for the industry. It's the transition to ESG, the move towards sustainable investments. It's not only becoming a topic from an investor point of view, no, it is becoming a trigger for investment decisions, and this is what makes the big difference going forward. So let me now dig into some of the reasons and the rationale to be here in Luxembourg. And let me start with you, Héctor. Bankinter was the first Spanish bank with a full licensed subsidiary in Luxembourg. How was your experience so far?
Well, thank you, Yves, for the kind introduction, and thank you, Luxembourg for Finance, to organize this event today. Well, Bankinter certainly is not the usual international bank based in too many locations. So while our headquarters are in Spain, we were gaining in the last year European exposures, but mainly investing in Luxembourg with a subsidiary. And in addition, we bought a branch in Portugal with more than 800 employees on Fanelli Island. So that's the reason that Spain and Portugal are our main target markets. So focusing on Iberia is really relevant for us. In Luxembourg, Bankinter has been developing its activities for almost 10 years. Basically, as you said, mainly oriented to private banking. And we established a subsidiary in 2012 because of we request a huge demand of our clients. They were pushing up for diversification. So I think that this is the first point. Diversification is clue for the private banking industry, and now I think that with Luxembourg we can offer this to our clients. Luxembourg, apart from the AAA rated country, I think that is rated by the main international rated agencies, provides to our clients a secure environment and legal stability on their investment. Again, this is another point that it is absolutely important for the managing of the wealth of our clients. One of the lawyers we used to work with reasoned quite straightforward. He said that Luxembourg regulation is quite boring because once you learn it, it remains stable along the year. So nothing to learn about that. And this is a real reflect of the steadiness of Luxembourg. And I would like to finish also not missing that Luxembourg is doing an important effort and it is leading most of the time the implementation or the transponding of the European directives to the local regulation. And also I think that this is also an important fact of the reliability of the financial market.
Obviously, you have your Spanish hat when you moved to Luxembourg, and you've gained experience now in Luxembourg. You listen as well to your clients, to your investors. What is it now really that makes those clients come to Luxembourg to be booked in Luxembourg?
Well, I think that summarizing it, Luxembourg is the place to be. And why? Well, in my opinion, from the perspective of one of the main players of the Iberian private banking market, Luxembourg provides a diversified source of possibilities to manage the wealth of our clients. And it is an important complement on the added value offered of the group. The environment also offers the possibility to use a wide range of the different products and services. I think the industry is really prepared for that. And I should mention the UCITS funds. No? I think that I don't need to repeat that Luxembourg is the second largest investment fund center around the world and the first in Europe. So it means that it has a powerful industry ready to provide a quality and expert services that also make easy the Luxembourg-based products to be offered to our clients. No? On the other hand, I think that it is really important also to mention the particularities of the unit link. I think that it's not only that our clients could assure their investments, but also they can segregate or eliminate the risk of default of the company. And I think that's what we have seen in the last years made us think about it and could be really, really interesting. And it is done by segregating their asset, their portfolio from the others, the other policyholders, and also from the balance sheet of the company. But maybe Juanjo or the other speakers could go deep in detail to that aspect. And finally, I think that we don't have to forget the incipient popularity of the alternative investment funds. No? In the sense that I think that built on a solid regulation, they can provide our clients to have more flexibility and more agility on their investment. And I refer to the words of the Minister of Finance that, for example, products as sustainable products, energy, water, all that kind of products could be entered, could be invested directly by our clients since they are investing on these kind of products.
Obviously, the closeness to the funds business is of key importance as well on the wealth management side, and we'll come to that a little bit later on. I'd like to turn now to Falk to cover a bit more the international perspective, running a Swiss international private bank out of Luxembourg, having diversified from Luxembourg into Iberia with branches. How do you see that, and how complementary is that setup basically from a Spanish perspective into Luxembourg?
Mm-hmm. So thank you very much, Yves. First of all, thanks for having me under these special circumstances. Well, let's put it that way. We are actually a Swiss bank, and as everyone is aware, Swiss banks have only limited access into the European single market. Well, this is actually a fact. And for that reason, Julius Baer has established the European Hub, in the European Union, and it was decided to have that European hub in Luxembourg. So that's the role here of our bank in Luxembourg, Bank Julius Baer Europe, that's already the name. So when I put it a little bit into perspective, then our bank here locally has three main roles. So one is, we do business, we provide advice to clients cross-border. The second one is we are actually a product and service hub for products and services to be distributed into the European Union, so being compliant with the European Union regulatory framework. Well, and thirdly, that might be a little bit unusual, we are as well a technology hub providing technology platforms for our branches and as well for our sister banks in Europe. But coming actually to Iberia, which is the focus topic of today, yes, we have a branch in Madrid. And the background is quite interesting. Yves, what you said at the beginning is about what kind of clients do we provide services with. And yes, we have ultra high net worth individual clients. And here it is about advisory and booking. Let's distinguish between advisory and the booking. And advisory is all about proximity. And that's why the branch locally in Madrid is important, so that we are close to the clients. As you said, Yves, in the past, clients in Luxembourg were different, rather from the neighboring countries. Now it is much more international. However, it is about having advice close to them. And the booking is centralized here in Luxembourg, as I said, as well for us, for the reason of scalability, but as well to provide products and services in a way which covers many European Union countries. And when you look into that as well from a product and service perspective, I refer to the words of our Minister of Finance. One of the main topics is certainly sustainable finance. So ESG, and this can be done much better if, let's say, we use the ability of our Swiss mother company, as I said, with limited access into the European Union, but then providing these services and products to our clients through the branches, and particularly in Iberia. And we focus both on Spain and Portugal. As Héctor already said, these two markets are important. This is a very interesting clientele. They are in Spain and Portugal, as I said, ultra high net worth clients. They are looking for diversified and high sophisticated advisory business, which we provide, in line with the regulatory framework. But maybe this is a different topic to touch maybe on later.
I will touch on regulation straight away, if you give me that pickup, Falk. I guess if I can summarize, the setup that you have is getting you close to the clients and leveraging the infrastructure that you have instead of duplicating it multiple times. One question that I have is, as far as regulation is concerned, how do you perceive regulation for your business, which regulation is something that we cannot just avoid talking about? It's ever increasing. We've just made a study here in Luxembourg with the banks again, where we see that the investments into regulation are increasing on a yearly basis. Nevertheless, I think that Luxembourg still is a platform and giving you a base to do business which is sound and giving you a good framework as well. What is your perception and your view, Falk, on that?
Oh, yes, thanks, Yves. Well, regulatory compliance is something which we can talk on for hours. And yeah, we could perceive compliance as a burden, but let's look at it a little bit from another perspective. Let's see it as a chance. Well, look, we are here, let's say, various market participants in that panel. And actually, it should not be the case that we compete on compliance. I think this is rather the baseline for our business. So I think one of the main important facts is, well, we need to know, do we have the right clients in the firm? So if we can answer yes to that, I think this is the baseline. But when it comes to the services and products, we end up very quickly in the MiFID II environment. And here, certainly, as I said, we could perceive it as a burden, but I would phrase it as well as a cornerstone in order to move ahead with high sophisticated advice. Because if clients would like to have advice from us, so less discretionary portfolio management, which is a good product as well, but if they look for advice, we end up in the MiFID II environment. And then we need to get it right. And the client is expecting that. So from a compliance perspective, Yves, I would rather say, yes, the costs are increasing, but compliance, in my view, that framework, the regulatory framework, is more and more turning into a commodity. And I think we all agree that by saying that everything what can be automated or visualized will be, and everything what cannot be automated or digitalized, in my view, will become more valuable. And this is as well the case with compliance. So the framework, it's going to end up in a commoditized environment. So it's going to be a framework which is more or less a commodity, which is the same for us and for other partners. But the way how you conduct it, the way how you provide advice, I think that's important. And in that context, and this is maybe my last comment on that, is let me highlight the importance of technology. I said it already, automation, digitization. So when we do it right and we use technology rightly to provide that advice in a legal and compliant way, then the human factor, creativity, ethics, this is what the clients are going to look for. And this is where a centralized approach of a central booking platform, as I explained earlier, makes all the sense and enables our people locally on the ground in Spain to provide good advice to the Spanish and certainly as well to the Portuguese clients.
Very interesting perspective, Falk, and even more so that we are moving into a world where there is less and less arbitrage on regulation, as the framework is the same wherever you do business actually, and we can only hope that continued talks to the regulators that supervise you will be as productive as they can be in these times. Let's turn to now a completely different view, more the product view, and I turn to Luis, who can give us that product view. What is it from a product point of view that makes Luxembourg potentially unique, and do you have kinds of solutions and examples where you've worked with clients?
Yeah, I think, first of all, thanks a lot, Yves, and thanks a lot, Luxembourg for Finance, for having me here. In terms of products, Luxembourg has a very wide array of solutions that can be provided to clients. This is what we call the Luxembourg Toolkit. And the toolkit is like a menu, and we need to check what are the needs and requirements of the clients. And on that basis, we can make an assessment to what is the appropriate vehicle or product this client might need. In order to assess that, what we generally do, at least in a law firm, is that we check what type of investor are we facing, what type of asset class is he going to invest into, and thirdly, what is the type of strategy that he wants to carry out. So if I take an example, for example, some foreign high net worth individual, maybe based in Latin America, wishing to acquire Spanish or Portuguese assets via a Luxembourg vehicle or via a Luxembourg solution, then we would ask him, okay, what's the asset class? Is it financial assets? If so, what is the purpose of the vehicle? Are we looking at long-term creation of value, maybe some kind of state planning strategy, or is it more portfolio management, short-term capital gains? Depending on the answer, we might go one way or another. If we are in a long-term value creation, wealth management, state planning strategy, the SPF, the Société de Gestion de Patrimoine Familial, it's a very good option, which has been a very successful product in the market because it has very straightforward legal and tax features and provides these investors with the needs that they have. If, however, we go in the other direction, then we are entering a more sophisticated product, a more complex product, because it involves that the actual vehicle is involved in the management of the underlying assets, and it requires a more commercial company, a SOPARFI, a holding entity. And obviously, because of this complexity and this let's say, further requirements that are needed, the cost of the entity will be higher. There will be need for advisors, etc. So it always depends on what the client is looking for. Other options, when not looking at having a vehicle to manage the investments, are investors that are probably in Portugal or Spain that are looking to diversify their portfolio. When that occurs, an alternative is to invest in investment funds. But then it depends on the type of investor you have, because if you have a retail investor, then you're going to have to restrain yourself to UCITS. If you have a professional investor, however, the whole palette of alternative investment fund vehicles opens up to you. And these vehicles have been very prolific in the market in the last years. And you were mentioning ESG. Venture capitals with asset classes that qualify for ESG are booming at the moment. So I am pretty sure that we will see a lot of Portuguese and Spanish investors trying to obtain exposure to these products. The other product that we've seen have a lot of success in the latest years is, and I think Juan Jose will probably speak about that, Héctor already mentioned it, are unit life insurance products, because these products allow you to have a bundle or a combination of the different solutions that I mentioned via an insurance company. But I guess Juan Jose is better placed than me to speak about that.
We'll come to Juan Jose in a minute. Just maybe to put an Iberian flavor on it, do you see from an Iberian client perspective, as you work alongside the client in terms of structuring the solutions with the client, do you see special flavor for specific products?
Special flavor for specific products. When I see Spanish investors, it's always dependent on, as I mentioned, type of asset class and what the strategy is going to be. But we do see Spanish investors using holding companies to invest in the European Union, main subpar fees. Okay.
You mentioned the insurance, life insurance products being as well one of the products being used from a Luxembourg perspective. Juan Jose, can you tell us why life insurance in Luxembourg has grown to that extent and has become one of the most recognized wealth planning solutions for international clients?
Thank you very much, Yves, and a pleasure to be here at Luxembourg for Finance. And thank you to a nice introduction to insurance for my colleagues as well. So, appreciate it. First of all, let's take a view on what does it represent in terms of figures in Luxembourg. A brief summary. In 2020, assets under management on unit-linked products over 150 billion euros, gross written premiums over 19 billion euros, where Spain and Portugal already have collected last year together 1.7 billion euros. And we have also detected a growing trend in the last years in these two markets. We've been seeing also over the years how more insurance players from Luxembourg have been entering in these markets and staying there, which is very positive. Then second, life insurance and unit-linked more in particular, how does it fit in Luxembourg for the wealth planning strategies of our investors, and mainly, as we have already mentioned, ultra and high net worth individuals. The product in itself is a solution or a wrapper which covers different needs at the same time of our investors. We are talking about investment needs, tax and estate planning, and asset protections. And then Luxembourg has been a pioneer in developing and consolidating the industry in Europe within the freedom of services and creating its own mechanism. First, in terms of protection, you have already explained it also, Héctor. So the triangle of security with the tripartite custodian agreements, signed between the regulator, the CA, the Commissariat aux Assurances, the insurer in Luxembourg, and the custodian bank, an approved bank by the CAA. And also the super privilege, assuring this segregation of assets we have already mentioned. This in terms of protections of interests of customers. Then the high solvability, very high solvability of Luxembourg insurers, which is a key point as well. Then in terms of how to provide flexibility and the possibility to conceive solutions, the tax neutrality in Luxembourg. Only the tax framework of the country of residence will apply. And we are talking about international clients living in different countries, but moving more and more to another country. And this is the portability of the policy. How can I take my insurance wrapper in my journey to my different situations? And Luxembourg has developed a key expertise in cross-border matters for this purpose.
Anything you'd like to add from a unit-linked wrapper perspective on the Luxembourg advantages to Iberian clients specifically?
Yeah, that was a macro view on what's life insurance industry. And then if we go to Spain and Portugal, the first point to mention is the open architecture. So that means our investors may freely choose the custodian bank they want to use and also the asset manager, based locally in Spain or Portugal or abroad. And we have seen already how Spanish banks setting up a full subsidiary branch in Luxembourg, or a bank from Luxembourg with a branch in Spain, etc. We're creating more and more bridges between all the actors. Then second, the access to a wide panel of investment supports and a wide range of assets, benefiting from one side from insurance regulations set up by the CAA, but at the same time being compliant with the domestic regulations in this country. We are talking about dedicated insurance internal funds with a tailor-made discretionary management. We're talking about specialized investment funds with a free choice of investments. We have heard already about advisory, for instance, quite used in Portugal. Investment funds in general. Sometimes also the possibility of analyzing specific assets, and always with the support with law firms based in Luxembourg and with the expertise with domestic law firms. The tax neutrality already mentioned, so that means you will be subject to the tax framework of your country of residence and how it can be adapted if you are moving to another place. And finally, one of the key points of insurance, this is the transmission tool, estate planning. So how can I assure in an easy manner and secure manner that I will transfer my wealth to the beneficiaries I wish? And what about if also my beneficiaries are living in another country? So all parties involved are really providing global advice. And at the end, we could say Luxembourg and also insurance industry is strict to protect, but at the same time flexible to conceive the solutions.
Thank you very much for that perspective. Maybe let's touch at the end, again, briefly the topic of ESG and climate change, which requires a huge transition, basically affecting as well the private sector that needs to invest and help investing into that transformation. Question for the bankers and as well then for the product side. How do you perceive the efforts being undertaken in Luxembourg from that perspective? And does it affect your business as well? Héctor.
Okay, I can start. Well, I think that the Luxembourg government and the Luxembourg authorities, I think that they are pioneers, no, in this trend, no. I refer, for example, to the launching of the first green stock exchange years ago, which is the most important market for issuance of green bonds in the world, no. So I think it's really, really relevant. And also, all the regulation and all the measures they are implementing to try to promote and to push the asset managers and the investment funds to fulfill with this regulation and this. So I think that, again, Luxembourg is doing an important effort to fulfill or to be on advance of this change that I think that it is the future, no? And it is granting our future for the next coming years.
Maybe Falk, quick word from you.
Yes, thank you, Yves. Actually, you know, one could do a big mistake while looking at ESG as just another regulation, you know, being imposed on banks, on insurance companies, on fund service providers, just another regulation. And the mistake would be that all the companies and firms would treat it like another regulation. And that would be a really administrative way, and I'm pretty sure that we will all fail by doing so. But unfortunately, sometimes this is still, ESG is still perceived like that. I see it completely the other way around, because the initiative here in terms of ESG is coming primarily as well from the client. The client is asking for such products, and I'm pretty sure that there will be a time. Today is the question, do you offer ESG compliant product, service, etc., etc.? This is probably today already the case. In some countries more, in other countries less. There will be a time, and I'm pretty sure that this is rather at the doorstep and not just far away, where the clients are going to ask, really? Do you offer non-ESG compliant products? Really? You do? So, and then you will be in trouble. So that's why I appreciate the initiative of the Luxembourg government, the PACTA initiative, where I personally think we all should participate. Maybe we are not all yet there, but we need to get there quick. And if so, from my personal perspective, this will rather add or will be a competitive advantage for the Luxembourgish financial center. Yeah, that's my view, Yves.
Thank you very much for that view, Falk, which I endorse completely as well, and yours as well, Héctor. So from a product point of view, we need products as well. What is your view on how we do in Luxembourg?
On the legal side, I cannot but agree with what Falk just said. The appetite from the client, the appetite from the investors, that's a reality already. Luxembourg has enabled a framework to launch products such as investment funds to, satisfy this hunger for ESG products. And what we see every single day is that there are more and more funds being launched with the aim of acquiring ESG compliant assets.
And from insurance point of view, the same thing. So the insurers are really communicating in terms of ESG policies and how can we for sure answer to the needs of our investors. We need to know how do we invest in ESG and how are we also looking for our banking partners in knowing how are you promoting all this part of investments. So I think it's a key point now covering the whole financial sector where really insurers are totally involved.
Thank you very much. Well, actually, I think we're coming slowly to the end of our session. I do hope that we've been able to answer some of the questions that you might have had in physical presence for such a session. Unfortunately, this was not possible, and I hope that we were able to answer the questions that you might have had. With that, I would like to thank the colleagues on my left and as well on the video for having participated and shared so many insights from their personal perspective as well. And I do hope, and I'm pretty sure that you're going to have a very successful continuation of the conference. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you very much, Yves. We can now take another deep dive into investor solutions, this time addressing asset management and fund servicing. Together with her panel, Corinne Lamesch, chairperson and member of the board of the Association of the Luxembourg Fund Industry, will look into the increasing demand for Luxembourg solutions, alternative funds, as well as ESG funds. But before kicking off, I would like to remind you that the next panel will include a poll and that questions can be submitted directly to the panelists. You can do this via a text box that you can see below your screen. Just in case a text box does not appear, you can always refresh your page. Corinne, thank you so much. I hand it over to you now.
Thank you, Lynn. Hello and welcome to you out there, I hope in sunny Portugal and Spain. And also a big welcome here to my panelists. Let me start with saying a few words on the Luxembourg fund industry. Despite the challenges of the current crisis, the Luxembourg fund industry has stayed more than robust and has remained a big and safe pillar of the Luxembourg economy. Assets under management have grown by more than 20% over the last 12 months, and we have now reached 5.3 trillion of assets under management. Assets managers from Iberia are also growing their presence in Luxembourg, and they manage nowadays more than 40 billion of assets in Luxembourg in regulated funds. And there are also a lot of unregulated funds where the numbers are not publicized, so it's still bigger than that. And Spain and Portugal are obviously also very important markets for Luxembourg domiciled funds to be distributed into. So actually more than 55% of the foreign funds registered in Spain and Portugal are Luxembourg funds. So let me first start with a poll question. I think you have already seen it on the screen. You need to scroll down your screen and you will see it. What are the key drivers for the internationalization of your business? Is that cross-border distribution, access to a larger pool of investors, greater exposure to alternative asset classes, or an internationally oriented legal, regulatory and tax framework? We will come back to the answers later, and I think this would also be a very good first question to my panelists. So let me quickly introduce my distinguished panelists. So here on my left, I have Jaime Gómez-Ferrer. Jaime is a conducting officer at Santander Asset Management in Luxembourg, one of the bigger Iberian asset managers in Luxembourg. And in the middle, we have Michèle Eisenhuth. Michèle is a partner at the law firm Arendt and Medernach. Arendt and Medernach is a leading fund formation law firm in Luxembourg. And then to the far left, we have Herbert. Herbert is heading the EMEA asset manager sales for Citibank, and he is also very active in Iberia. So let us now look at the poll results. I have to take on my glasses. Okay, so 50% say they would set up a cross-border international business for cross-border distribution. Others for 50% for internationally oriented framework. Access to a larger pool of investor is third, and then last, greater exposure to alternatives. Oh, it's still changing, but what I don't understand is how the numbers can be above 100%. But anyhow, that's not my role to confirm the numbers. But anyhow, I think that gives us a good lead into our first question. So how does my panel see that Luxembourg fits in a cross-border agenda for Iberian asset managers? Let's start with Herbert.
Thank you very much, Corinne. I will be very aligned to the first answer to this poll because anyway, the distribution, I think, is the key factors to decide to come in Luxembourg. So if you look a bit about the past, Luxembourg has already been a kind of early adopter for the UCI, and they have developed over time a very strong connectivity with different markets and fund platforms. And today, as you mentioned, so the Luxembourgish fund range are distributed over 77 markets, so which is very impressive. So I'm fully aligned with that first statement, and I would say that on top of this connectivity, so a lot of things have been built and equipped for Luxembourg to support the Iberian asset manager to first support their activities, but also grow their business from Luxembourg, and also reaching new markets, especially on the LATAM side. So that's really, I think, the key driver on this side.
Okay, thank you. And Jaime, maybe you can also give us your view from an asset manager perspective.
Thank you, Corinne. And thank you, Luxembourg for Finance, for organizing this event. Apart from the drivers that we are watching at the poll question, which I believe my colleagues and me were going to elaborate, I want to highlight another additional factor, which is the people. Okay? In Luxembourg, we have 95 nationalities with more than 200,000 people commuting on a daily basis to work here. Luxembourg provides us with different service providers where you can find all the solutions you may need, starting from the central administrator of any kind of assets, major players playing as custodian and providing services, law firms providing structuring for any needs for bringing solutions to clients, and also, for example, independent directors, which are also the guardians on the governance on the boards of the funds and the boards of the management company. No? And this is something that takes years to implement. It definitely means that if you want to scale up the business in an international framework, Luxembourg is one of the places that I think you should be established. But secondly, I think that for a global player, if you want to launch global products, Luxembourg brings the solution to also simplify the conversation with the client. And this goes in line with what Herbert was mentioning, establishing distribution scheme throughout the different countries, which not only include the Iberian market, but also the LATAM countries or other locations worldwide. No? That is, I think, that the two main points here. No? Coming back to LATAM and to Iberia, I think that there's a huge interest also for institutional investors, meaning insurance companies and pension funds, etc., to invest in the Luxembourg registered funds. I think that Michèle could elaborate a little bit more on this.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go to Michèle. I mean, maybe from a regulatory perspective, is there any advantage to come to Luxembourg?
Yeah, Corinne, thanks for the question. I would just like to expand on what you said on distribution, because you know that close to 60% of the funds which are distributed on a cross-border basis globally are Luxembourg funds. And on average, each Luxembourg fund is registered in 8 countries. That's quite impressive. But to come back to what you say, Corinne, I believe the key advantage of Luxembourg, that's the proximity of the authorities. It does not exist anywhere else. The Luxembourg legislator does consult the industry before issuing a bill of law. The Luxembourg regulator does consult the industry before issuing any circular, any guidance for the market. They are keen to meet the needs of the country, and they are keen to maintain the competitiveness of the country. When it comes to the CSSF, of course, they are strict because they have to apply the rule. Each player has to comply with the rules. But the regulator is always keen to organize B2B meetings with each player when there is an issue. When there is an issue, they are there. They are there to discuss and to help to find an appropriate solution. They are also there to discuss and to agree on a timeline for a specific project because they are sensitive to the time to market constraints. That's the key attractiveness of Luxembourg for me.
Thank you, Michèle. So let's now look at the various asset classes which we are seeing, or trends which we are seeing in Luxembourg. And I think one of the trends is the growing of the private asset class. It's true that usage is still our main pillar here in Luxembourg for the fund industry, but the alternative asset class is really growing rapidly. We are currently at 879 billion regulated AIFs in Luxembourg, and there's a big unregulated market as well. And this already makes up 17% of the Luxembourg fund industry. So, Michèle, if I can come back to you. So why would an Iberian alternative manager choose Luxembourg?
Corinne, because we have a wonderful toolbox, I would say. We have SOPA fees, we have securitization vehicle, we have limited partnership, RAIF, SICAR, SICAF, Part 2 UCIT, Part 2 funds, UCIT. We have a toolbox from the less regulated and more flexible vehicle to the more regulated and less flexible vehicle, depending of the type of investors you are targeting and depending of the underlying asset class. And the Iberian promoter have used a lot, let's say, SIF, SICAR, and RAIF for their alternative investments, in particular for real estate and infrastructure funds, but also for debt funds. And I was quite impressive when I saw the number of that. Of course, there is some downside of these vehicles. Why? Because you know that they use an AFM to sell, to benefit from the passport, and the AFM passport may just be there if you sell to professional investors. But the needs of Iberian promoters are also for family offices, for well-informed investors, and these well-informed investors are not considered as being professional investors. They are just well-informed investors. And that's why we see a trend, we have seen a trend quite recently, an interest from Iberian promoters for LTIF, the European Long-Term Investment Funds. Why? Because an LTIF, if it is set up, for instance, as a Part 2 fund, as a limited partnership, it may be sold to retail investors, and it may, at the same time, benefit from the AFMD passport. And that's the huge interest of that vehicle. 18 have already been launched in Luxembourg. There are at least 10 other projects in the pipeline, and I have been quite impressed when I saw the numbers of these LTIF, which are already distributed, in particular in Spain. And the cherry on the cake is that there has been some complaints in the market that the vehicle was not flexible enough, but the EU Parliament will deposit a new regulation by the end of the year to make the framework even less flexible than it is right now. Then I believe that's more flexible.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, more flexible than it is right now. And also, another cherry on the cake, you know that that type of vehicle does promote social and environmental features, which is also in the air, I would say.
Yes, thank you, Michèle. And I have to say that echoes at ALFI, we are also definitely seeing that there is a retailization or democratization of the private asset class, because obviously because of the low interest rate, investors are seeking higher returns. So definitely a trend out there. So Herbert, if I can ask you, so what type of alternative asset classes are on demand, and how is Luxembourg standing in this respect?
I will try to be as enthusiastic as Michèle about these asset classes, but to be honest with you, I think the Iberian managers are really following the trend of the market. The first asset class is really about the private equity. So we can see clearly a trend of raising structures investing in private equity, followed by private debt and a bit of real estate. By the way, this real estate trend is also common with the wealth management and with the private banking, when you can see common type of investment. So it's very important. I just would like to elaborate on one point, and Jaime said very clearly at the beginning that the ecosystem is very important. I think it's good to highlight here in Luxembourg that we did a lot of efforts to be very well set up for the future for the alternatives, because we have a lot of actors who are able to support every type of asset classes, from the front to back to front on almost all jurisdictions. So the centers is almost winning here the race to onboard all the alternative investment types, so which is really good. So clearly, the Iberian, I think, are really benefiting from that trends and investing massively in that type of asset classes. And the new launches we are seeing as an asset servicer is confirming that trends. No.
Anything you want to add, Jaime? Or?
No, I think that it's also an interesting point to have in mind that we have to rebuild the economy under sustainable principles that we will discuss later on, and we will need massive private investments coming forward. So I think that the asset classes that Herbert described were aligned with this.
Yeah, no, very good.
In particular, private debt, that it's...
Very good point as well, yeah. So let's move to another big trend, and I think the previous contributors and panels have already talked about that trend as well, which is sustainable investing. And in our area, the asset management area, I would say that sustainable issues are front and center of the asset management industry at the moment. If you look at the flows, I think in 2020, 52% of the new flows in Europe went into sustainable funds. And Luxembourg gathered 44% of this new flows. And I think that sustainable funds make up around now 10%, more or less, of our assets. And I think there's a big room to still grow. And I'm convinced we're going to grow this asset class substantially over the next years. So, Michèle, there's obviously the hot topic is SFDR. So what can you tell us about the regulatory development in the area of sustainable investing?
Thanks, Corinne. And I'm sure you will all remember the nightmare of the 10th of March when you have to categorize your funds as Article 6, Article 8 or Article 9 to comply with the SFDR Level 1 measures. But I have to say that the results were quite impressive, because you know that in Luxembourg, 30% of the fund, 30, have been categorized as Article 8 funds, 3 as Article 9, and the rest as Article 6, meaning that we have 30% of our funds which would like to promote, indeed, sustainable investments in their portfolio. What is important to keep in mind is that on the 1st of January next year, there is still a potential debate on the date, but let's assume that the date will be kept. On the 1st of January next year, you will have to comply with the famous SFDR Level 2 measures, meaning that you will have to disclose the percentage of your investments in your portfolio which are sustainable. And you will have also to comply with the famous taxonomy-related disclosures. And what we've seen from March to now. And what we will see, I'm sure, from now to the end of the year, that's a clear trend towards a move of the current Article 6 funds into Article 8 funds, and a move from the current Article 8 fund to Article 9 fund, which is really the evidence of the fact that people are keen really to demonstrate that they are sensitive to sustainability. A last point I would like to mention, it's the initiative of the Luxembourg legislator, which has issued a law in December last year to promote sustainable investments. And you all know that as from the 1st of January next year, you may benefit from a decrease of the contribution tax, depending on the proportion of sustainable investment you will have in your portfolio. You know that the contribution tax right now is 5 basis points, but it may be decreased to 4, 3, 1, 2, 1, depending on the percentage of assets sustainable in your portfolio, which is again a big step forward in my view.
Thank you, Michèle. So let me now ask you from a business perspective maybe more. So how is Luxembourg comparing to other jurisdictions when implementing sustainable investing? Let me start maybe with Herbert.
I would say that it's a very interesting question, and I have two words coming in my mind. The first one is pioneer, because I think Luxembourg was a pioneer back in the 90s, investing in the first microfinance institution, which is demonstrating a good track record. You mentioned the figures about how much market shares Luxembourg is standing regarding the ESG, and I think this trend is still confirmed because now we see a lot of new funds coming with the ESG flag. And the second word will be much more about forward-looking, because we mentioned the equipment, we mentioned the ecosystems, but we should also mention this initiative that Michèle said, so the legislation, which is supporting the business trend, but also some really business-oriented initiatives like, for example, the Luxembourg Green Exchange, which is promoting the issuance of bonds, green bonds. And on top of that, more important, something like an export outside Luxembourg, which is a Lux flag, giving the insurance to the investors that we are already well diversified from a portfolio perspective and compliant with the green bonds as it should be. So really, I believe that we are very forward-looking, and Luxembourg might be very well positioned in the race. And I have no hesitation and no doubt to say that we potentially continue like this for the next coming years.
But so in Iberia, do they have local labels as well, like the Lux flag one, or do you think that international players would choose a Luxembourg label?
They have one, and it's not doing consensus for the moment because they are very willingness to structure the ESG world as well. But I would say that taking into consideration that the existing domiciliation is much more Luxembourg, so of course it's quite easy to do that first step and say, okay, let's go first with Luxembourg. We have the framework, we have the oversight, we have the flag, we have the label. So everything is on one-stop shop. I'm a bit commercial here, but it's a one-stop shop and you can go forward.
Yeah, no, but I know that obviously many countries are now obviously developing their own labels, and many funds have nowadays more than one label, have many different labels for marketing into different countries. So I think that will be an important development as well, to see how we are making sure that we have the right label to make sure that the funds which are saying that they are sustainable are really sustainable. So Jaime, from your perspective, what do you see in this area, developing in this area?
Well, I would like to go first to a higher level first. For me, I think that ESG is not the only regulation that we have to comply with. I mean, it's a regulation that we have to comply for us. You know, we only have one planet, and we only have one future, and we have to think on the medium and the long term on this. So I think that Luxembourg is on really the right track to meet the ambitious target of net zero by 2020. And we have to think about that the employees work for a purpose, the investors invest for a purpose, and the behaviors of the investors change really, really fast, and the companies has to adapt on this. So we have to check and start to be really familiar with not only topics like the carbon footprint, the health and safety, the remote telework, or the inclusion. These are topics that covers the entire also ESG framework. No? Regarding Luxembourg, of course, there are a variety of actions that has been taken. Herbert has also mentioned the award of an issuing of labels by the Lux flag, which is an agency that was set up in 2006, but also the fast track that Michèle mentioned, that the CSSF established in order to move forward under a complete digitalization system to update the pre-contractual documentation to provide to investors. And now we have the challenges coming ahead, also taking into account the level 2 technical standards regulations that we have to comply with. And without forgetting the Luxembourg Green Stock Exchange, that is one of the, I think, the flagships here in Luxembourg. So I think that it's something that we have to make it ourselves and not comply because the regulator says that we have to comply with. Regarding the asset managers, there's a nice opportunity also with the next generation funds that, for example, Spain is receiving for digitalization of more than 72 billion, I think. So the asset managers, we also can play a role there to rebuild the economy in the next coming years. And yeah, I think that this is one of the main topics for the short, medium, and long term.
I would like to add something because I think Jaime tried to say that this is a conviction-driven exercise here on board the AG. And we should also mention that it's sort of very well aligned to the politics of the government to be extremely engaged in the sustainability initiatives and politics. So their roadmap for sustainability is very clear. It's also very demonstrating this alignment between the finance industry, but also with the behavior of the government. So I think it's important to mention that.
Right. I think we could continue to discuss on this topic for a long time, and it's going to stay on our agenda for the years to come, as you say, Jaime. So topic to stay tuned on. Let's now talk on maybe a last topic I want to discuss is if you are an international asset manager or foreign asset manager or an Iberian asset manager, if you want to come to Luxembourg, what is the best way to do that? Should you set up your own manco or should you go and look for a third-party service provider? So maybe, Jaime, you could give me your view on this?
Well, I think that as everybody knows, and I think also the attendees, there are a lot of variety of asset management solutions in Luxembourg. If you want to do some structuring on holding companies, if you want to work with a third-party manco, just to jump into the Luxembourg hub and see how it goes, your business strategy there, and also setting up a management company or an IFM in Luxembourg. That depends on the business strategy that you may have, but also taking always into consideration the highest level of exigency that comes now from the CSSF. I think that we have a very, very regulated environment, and we have to, for sure, meet always the regulation that the CSSF issues when you want to be a player settled in Luxembourg. So it depends on the business strategy and on the plans that any company may have. No? But there are solutions for any kind of a strategy, I think, in Luxembourg for an asset manager player.
Thank you, Jaime, indeed. So maybe let's hear your view on it, Herbert.
I will go in that direction because I think there is no good or bad decision regarding setting up in Luxembourg. There is different business strategy factors behind that decision to get here. The time to market, the type of investment, the level of oversight and of controls you would like to apply, the type of underlying investors. But below that, I think it's important to mention that everything is possible because the ecosystem is really rich. The community of professionals is very high. There is no limitation in covering all asset classes, every type of activities and functions along the value chain. And on top of that, so the knowledge is even cross-border because we use in Luxembourg to cope with inbound and outbound flows of investment. So we have a very good knowledge about cross-jurisdictions implications and how we could deal with that. The ecosystem is very rich. The number of factors along the value chain is very important. And since the creation of your project until the distribution, I think you will find everything you need to set up here. So really, I think it's just a matter of deciding first what is your business strategy and your key drivers to set up here.
And I just would like to jump on what you said. That's true that we have a highly regulated environment in Luxembourg, and that's why we have that reputation and that brand. But Just to let you know, and Corinne knows that when we reviewed the consultation of the EU on the AFMD review, we said, why should we be impose all these rules? We already comply with these rules. And that's again, the evidence of the fact that we are in advance in Luxembourg. And that's key for me. We have that regulated environment, which is safe, and we are in advance, let's say, and that's why also players do choose Luxembourg as their hub.
Well, thank you, all of you, for these insights on these main topics. I think that we would like to leave a few minutes maybe for questions. So I'm looking here. Do we have any questions?
Yes, Corinne, we've got a lot of questions coming from the audience. Perhaps we could start with the following one. On crypto assets, and it says the Spanish regulator recently allowed fund managers, Spain-based funds and SICAVs, to offer crypto products to institutional investors under certain conditions. How is it in Luxembourg, and how do you see this looking forward, both in Luxembourg and around Europe?
So yeah, digital crypto asset is definitely also a hot topic in Luxembourg. I think this is a regulatory question, so I'm going to ask Michèle.
Yeah, thanks, Corinne. Look, what is for sure is that for the time being, you cannot set up a fund sold to retail investors and investing in crypto assets. The CSSF just does not allow it for now, as many other regulators, I have to say. But what you could do is to set up another type of fund than UCITS. For instance, you may create an AIF with a notarized AFM. The problem is that if you do it, you need a depository bank in Luxembourg, and for now, I'm not aware of any depository bank which will be willing to enter into that field, but maybe Herbert may comment on that. But because of our toolbox, we have other solutions. And we may, for instance, invest in crypto assets if we sell to professional investors, launching a limited partnership, which would not be an AIF. Or we may set up an AIF with, for instance, a registered AFM. Or we may even set up an AIF with an AFM which would not be an EU AFM, meaning that with our toolbox, we enable people to set up, let's say, their funds as they wish, depending on the targeted investors. The last conversation I had with the CSSF in that respect showed that they will not change their mind for the time being, but nevertheless they say, and you may all be aware, that there is a draft regulation on the markets in crypto assets, and the CSSF also told us at the time, situation may evolve if we could have the evidence that these markets are controlled.
Okay, great. So,
there is a hope.
There is a hope. There's already things we can do, but there's a hope we can even do more.
Exactly.
Great. Is there any other question from?
Distribution. Are Luxembourg funds more widely accepted for distribution by Spanish, Portuguese banks compared to locally domiciled funds?
Maybe that could be a question for Jaime or for Herbert. I'll let you.
I believe that the main institutional investors, international institutional investors, are more familiar with the Luxembourg-registered funds. That, to answer in a nutshell, because I think we have a short time, no matter if we are talking about Spanish institutional investors or European or Latin institutional investors.
I'm sharing the same point of view. So I think it's quite neutral here. And from a distribution perspective, I think the Luxembourgish stamps have always been a very good marketing point. I'm already saying and thinking about marketing of funds on the market. So really, I think it's, I would say, I give a short advance for the one who are very leveled by Luxembourg compared to the local one.
Good. I think so.
Maybe
I look at
one? Yeah.
a last question? Okay.
Is it necessary a certain scale of business or AUM to operate out of Luxembourg, or as boutique, smaller asset manager could also leverage on Luxembourg solutions?
Who wants to take that one? Herbert, I see. Yeah.
Yes, I think I will take this one. I think this is not a matter of size. I think it's first a matter of project, and then what is the underlying investment, the type of investor. So we should look at the overall business case, not only about the size. then I think the ecosystem is very well equipped to adopt and to onboard a variety of different types of asset managers, small or big, diversified or very vertical, very convicted-driven or very broad. So I think there is no limitation. We can see sometimes in the market, so funds with a very small start and with very promising raise, and we're also very big funds who can stay like this for years. So I think there is no truth. I just say that the market is really able to support a lot of things. And this is also especially true because you have a very strong touch point with the private banking, with the tailor-made services on which we can also rely for more small structures or with less ambition than the biggest one.
Good. Anyone wants to add a last word on this one? No? No? Okay. So I think that brings us already to the end of our panel, and I would like to thank you that you stayed with us. I know we were the last panel, I would like to thank my panelists, and I really look forward to being able to meet you again, hopefully soon in the short future, in Iberia, in one of your beautiful cities. So thank you very much, and let's see each other again next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Corinne.
I've got two very special guests with me that I've been really looking forward to interviewing. Both of them are excellent ambassadors when it comes to Luxembourg-Iberia relations, especially in the field of fintech. Let me first start with you, Fran. You are connecting with us from your breathtaking headquarters in the midst of the port of Valencia. You are the CEO and founder of the Innsomnia Accelerator, a leading innovation hub in Spain, developing large fintech programs. And you're also a writer of books and columns about business, finance, and new technologies. And you always do that from a European perspective. And then next to me, I've got Christian Gillot. Christian, you know everything about robots and machine learning. You basically teach the robot how to read and understand financial documents. And by doing that, you also make the lives of those working in finance much more human. You are the founder and CEO of a very promising RegTech firm. And Tetrao, the name of the firm, is based in both Barcelona and Luxembourg. Christian, Fran, it's lovely to have you here. Now, there are at least 1 million of questions that I would like to ask you, but I will need to make a selection. Quickly touching on the previous two panels. Christian, you regularly have discussions with CEOs and management of banks and asset management firms about machine learning and RegTech solutions. Since the creation of Tetrao about 5 years ago, do you see a change in awareness about the importance of adopting such solutions in the wealth and fund sectors?
Thank you for your question, Lynn. Indeed, the evolution is striking. I mean, just a couple of years ago, no one was talking about artificial intelligence. In fact, 4 years ago, I was presenting for the first time at the ALFI conference, the Luxembourg Investment Funds Association. And after my presentation, people were puzzled about what is it? They were just saying, what is it, artificial intelligence? And I saw our change was happening so fast because just a year later, I was presenting again. And this time, people, they were saying, but how does it work? How does it apply to my business? I'm just curious. And just a year later, so 2 years ago, people were saying already, the CEOs, how I'm going to implement it. Because the whole ecosystem has come to the realization that this is a change that no one can stop and it's going to happen. So how I'm going to implement it, how I'm going to keep a competitive advantage because I'm using the best technology. This is how it goes.
Mm-hmm. Now, the digital transition is one transition. Minister Gramegna spoke in his opening remarks about the triple transition, also talking about sustainable finance. Now, Fran, when we look at that EU taxonomy entry into force, what is the role that RegTech solutions can play in facilitating compliance in sustainable finance?
Thank you very much to invite me for this event. And concerning your question, absolutely, we need this after a really interesting period in which the EU has advanced in the regulation and also in the definition of sandboxes that allow us to simplify the process to create new products and services in the financial sector. We need to increase the role of RegTech companies. We have to clean the bureaucratic compliance processes we have at EU level. So we need to guarantee the compliance in the regulation, but also the risk of sanctions and digitalize regulatory processes. For example, in Spain, we have a really amazing ecosystem of RegTech companies representing more than 100 companies operating in Spain. Most of these companies are focused on digitalization and also on compliance to reduce the impact of the compliance in the companies. And I think in the processes, and I think this is also that we need at European level to create big companies, to create spin-offs of the companies we have operating in different countries. And also, this is something that we need to create unicorns at EU level affecting or concerning the fintech sector.
Now, continuing on the topic of that transition towards a more sustainable economy and sustainable finance, the Luxembourg Financial Center is very much dedicated to sustainable finance. The Luxembourg Stock Exchange, Christian, recently took a major stake in Tetrao. This was related to a data management project for the Green Exchange. Now, if we continue a little bit on the data management itself, what are the key challenges that financial institutions face when dealing with that massive amount of data?
So the data is massive, and the regulatory framework is also evolving very fast with new standards coming up every year. And so the financial institutions have to adapt. And the green finance is also a very significant development in finance. It's asking the participants to be transparent about their dealings and to go into more transparency, giving more data bonds. So the data management aspect is just growing. And that's why the Luxembourg Stock Exchange acquired a significant stake in our company, because this is central to their business and to any company in the ecosystem. So just to go over the green bonds and the green exchange subject a little bit deeper, you have here a new ecosystem that is coming up, that is growing, doubling every year, and changing the way things are working. And so what are the challenges? Well, first you need exhaustivity. You have a new domain that is growing up, and you want all the data. If you don't have all the data about the sector, then your contribution to this sector is not so interesting to the different parties, being investors or asset managers. And how do you do that when data is so massive, as you mentioned? Well, you need technology. And technology is really about giving tools, better tools, to people working in finance so that they can do the job on time. And with third aspect that is very important is data quality. Every human being is doing little mistakes along the way. So with artificial intelligence, we are making sure that we use the best minds, and those best minds, they are assisted by technology so that they stop doing mistakes, because those mistakes, they have a safety net that is catching up those mistakes and focusing them so that we can ensure to have the utmost quality at massive scale. This is what we can do with technology. And so just before we were talking about the EU taxonomy, but the EU taxonomy just came into force. So I can tell you, because we work on this data, that as of today, it's only a single-digit percentage of bonds that are using this taxonomy. Yet we want to know about all the previous one. So we are doing the job of categorizing them according to the new taxonomies that are coming up, dealing with all the past, so that you have comparability, which is also a very important property for the investors. And new ideas come up every day, and so you have to go over all the data that's been published to essentially create actionable data for the industry to continue to evolve.
Mm-hmm. So we have to look both into the past and into the future, and I would like to continue actually on the idea of quality, but also the best minds that Christian mentioned. We can talk a lot about technology, but without the human talent that is needed to develop these technologies, we need to see how we can work together. And if I understand correctly, Fran, you created three and a half years ago the Talent Route Network, which is a network whereby different accelerators in Europe collaborate to develop talent. Fran, can you tell us a little bit more about this initiative?
Thank you for the question. I was saying that we just put the idea into the table 3 years and a half ago with Alex Panican, which is one of the most passionate person I have ever met in this fintech ecosystem in my life. And the idea was very simple. We always met in Paris, in Amsterdam, in Madrid, Barcelona for different meetings, for different fintech meetings. And the question was always the same. Okay, we meet here, we exchange ideas, we develop not common projects, but at least common POCs. Well, how can we go one step further? What kind of things could we do together to create a network and sustain such a kind of dialogue, permanent dialogue between us? And this is the origin of the Talent Route. Results are currently important because we are more than 15 accelerators and incubators from all over Europe. We represent more than 11 countries. And it's true that the network is based in the European Union, but we also have strengthening the connections with Latin America, with Asia, and with North America. Future of the network is probably will be based on the reinforce of the dialogue between us. We need to create such a legal structure, but also, and this is something that we are actually doing, the main part of the project is how can we connect the talent we have in each local market with different local markets at EU level. So now we are taking part in different open innovation processes. For example, we are offering our banks in Spain the possibility to connect with other startups and scale-ups through the Talent Route network. And of course, we are also planning to take part in European programs and also to develop some, at least for this 2022, we expect to create our own event focus on fintech.
Now, through this collaboration that you have with the Loft in Luxembourg, you can help companies with a soft landing in Luxembourg. Can I ask you, Fran, what makes Luxembourg attractive to these RegTech or fintech firms?
First of all, all the activity you develop with your ministry, with your Luxembourg house, with the Loft is really, really awesome. So you are in the middle of the map when we think how to make global companies from Spain. So this is a very, very important point. But what we have, the offer we have to the companies we work with, to the startups, fast track programs. It is with our partners in Luxembourg, what we can offer to the companies is, okay, we can speed up the process to become global from Spain. Second one is the knowledge of the market and also the contacts you have, our partners in Luxembourg have at local level. It is contact with global banks, contact with global companies, and also very, very close access to the regulation in terms of the possibility to create a constructive dialogue with the regulators in Luxembourg. And also, to us, it's also very important your specialization in green finances, sustainable financing, and wealth management. And in this sense, we had one really, really nice experience in 2018, one of the best companies we have in Spain, based on wealth management technologies. The name is the Logic Value, was there meeting with local partners, investors, the Loft, and also banks to create a spin-off of the Spanish company in Luxembourg. We hope in the next month this will be a reality. And let me say, to end my answer, that the COVID, the pandemic, stopped us with a lot of projects that we have in the portfolio with the Loft. But we expect that in the next month we will run up again this collaboration and strengthen the partnership with you. And the first idea we have is to create a mission for the next springtime from Spanish companies to Luxembourg, just to meet with you opportunities there.
That sounds very interesting, and I can't wait to see that happen. Now, Christian, you have offices in Barcelona and Luxembourg. Is there any advice that you could give to companies that are interested in setting up operations in Luxembourg?
Yes, of course, do engage, do not hesitate, take contact with the Loft, like we mentioned, Luxembourg Fund Finance, House for Entrepreneurship. There are many ways, and through the different accelerators, because there are many in Luxembourg, you can ask them about their companies and they will really make a connection to relevant entrepreneurs. You can just contact me, I'm willing to do that, because we have to help each other to build the future of finance and fintech. So this is the great aspect of Luxembourg. We have a lot of connections towards every country in Europe, and so it's easy to make a local connection to someone who is from the same culture than you, talking the same language, and then you can jump to the next person that is relevant to what you want to achieve. So do engage and everything will come through.
Now, if you allow me, I would really like to end this interview with a more personal question, because I know that you're both very passionate about technology and about finance. What message can you pass to the next generation to keep that entrepreneurship spirit alive?
Well, there are many, but the first thing I would say is there's so much left to do. I was 13 when Windows 95 just came out of the market and internet was getting very popular. And I was learning computing with my father, and I was telling him, well, what a pity I came too late. Everything is already up and running, so what I'm gonna do? And today, I'm an entrepreneur in artificial intelligence and making it happen. And this is something new and very significant that is going to impact the lives of pretty much everyone. So that's what I think. There's so much left to do. And the more you go into entrepreneurship, the more you understand it. And so that's actually the message and the education I'm trying to give to my son. Be curious, open yourself to all the things that are here and that you can probably understand. Maybe something better than anyone else, and you can make it happen. So go for it, and do not think for a minute that there's nothing left. There's so much left to do.
Mm-hmm. And how are you making it happen, Fran, in Valencia?
In a very similar way that Christian do. In fact, I think the same. Christian, is there's so much left to do, and we need to reinforce the capacity to be curious in our families, sons, children, etc. From my point, My son is also a great entrepreneur. He's always doing new things in the school. He's trying to promote business in a local view. I always repeat the same: technology and innovation is less important than creativity and curiosity. So I try, from my point, to strengthen the capacities of my son, trying to be creative and curious. I would love he will be innovator, tech developer in the future, but I don't know, probably he's a barman, surfer, we never know, who knows. But in fact, world is facing a huge transformation, and we need, from my point of view, to increase the capacity to resist frustration. And this is also one of the weak points we have on education, and one of the things that I'm working hardly with my son.
Mm-hmm. Christian, how do you resist frustration?
Actually, I don't. Like I said, my son is just 4 years old, and I understand him because I want things to happen, and they don't, and it's so difficult. Like Frank just mentioned, in our society now, we are confronted more and more with video games, movies, and everything online, and it makes everything seem so easy. Well, it's not. I mean, if you want to move a tree with your bare hands, you're not going to do it. You can't make it. So the thing is that you need to understand your own frustration, but also the frustration of everyone involved. I mean, for our customers or partners, the ecosystem, we want things to happen, but it takes time. So you need to understand it and just come to the realization that there are steps to be done, one after the other, be humble and do one after the other, plan for it, and it's going to happen. And so that's my message of hope for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Christian, Fran, these are great messages to end with. I really enjoyed today's interview, and I can only wish you both the very best for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nice.
And that brings us already to the end of this live stream. I hope you enjoyed it. If there is one thing we can remember from today's discussions, is that Luxembourg and Iberia are complementary in many ways, and the wide variety of solutions can increase that collaboration even further. If you would need any more information, you can always contact our business development team or visit our website. I would like to thank you, the audience, for having taken the time to connect with us today, and I would also like to thank our speakers and sponsors that have made this event a success. In July, we will be back and we will focus on governance. Until then, stay safe and have a lovely summer.